Hey everyone, welcome back to the Triune Podcast. My guest for this week is Arielle Wagner. Arielle Wagner is the founder and CEO of Zera, which is a nonprofit dedicated to fighting human trafficking. I had a great conversation with Arielle. We talked about the ins and outs of her nonprofit, and we talked about her testimony that led her to starting this nonprofit and wanting to take action against human trafficking. Arielle has a very significant story, and she has a great testimony, and she actually has a lot of info to give about the ins and outs of human trafficking and just how close to home it actually is. Arielle is currently in Atlanta starting another branch for her nonprofit, and she is seeking support from whoever comes across her nonprofit, whether online or on social media. Me and Arielle sat down and we talked for about 40 minutes, and I basically just asked her the basics of human trafficking and the things that go on and the misconceptions that we have about it and what exactly we can do to fight against it. If you want to support Arielle at Zera, you can go to her website, which is zerahouse.com, and that's spelled ZERAHOUSE.org. And you can donate there. You can follow them on social media at Zera, or you can follow Arielle on social media at Rue_Adventures. Arielle is a wonderful person. She's got a great soul. We talked a lot, and I'm excited for you guys to listen to this because this is a very important episode to listen to. There's a great tragedy that is going on in our world and even in our own country that innocent people, young and old, are getting exploited for their bodies, and they are treated like objects, and they are taken advantage of and assaulted in various ways. It's pretty brutal the more that you understand just how tolerated this actually is in our culture. Mainly reason being is because we don't necessarily know how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is just something that it would be easy enough. It would be easy enough for everybody to get behind. It's not a controversial issue. There are no two sides to this coin. What goes on in human trafficking and the exploitation of women is universally wrong. It's bad. There's no question about it. Arielle has made it her life mission to dedicate herself to this area of evil, and has dedicated her life to make every effort to extinguish it. She obviously needs your help, but she's very accomplished and she's very well versed, and she is very deep and invested in what she's doing, and for the right reasons, obviously. I would encourage you to seek out this nonprofit, and whether through monetary support or through volunteering in some way, shape, or form, I would try to dedicate a little bit of yourself to what it would look like to end human trafficking. Human trafficking, actually, this may be the first time that I've ever talked about it on the podcast, but it is something that I myself would like to make an impact on, as far as, mitigating or decimating human trafficking altogether. A very unfortunate thing that I came across in my time in El Salvador and in Sicily was, if you are unfortunate enough to not have a family, and I simply mean being an orphan or being in foster care, your likelihood of experiencing some form of exploitation is astronomically higher than those who are blessed enough to have a family. And I mean a mom and dad, divorced or not. It breaks my heart to know that this is something that actually touches way more lives than you and I both understand. So with that being said, we'll get to this episode, but right before we do that, I want to thank you guys again for listening to the podcast and giving your support, and for sharing your input. giving your feedback and letting me know what you think and asking more questions. If you want to keep up more, obviously follow us on social media. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to support the podcast in any way, where there is a Patreon page, and you can go to patreon.com/George Shadburn to donate there on a monthly basis or just at a one-time donation. And then also the podcast website on Anchor has a donation page as well that you can give whatever amount you want. With that being said, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the input. And I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you learned a lot, because I did. And I hope you're more blessed for it and you feel inspired. And it tugs on your heartstrings a little bit, because it did tug on mine. So with that being said, thank you for listening. This is Arielle Wagner, and this is the Triune Podcast. Okay, we are here on the Triune Podcast. I am here with Arielle Wagner, and I am also here with my wife. And you are calling in from Atlanta currently, is that right?
That's correct, Atlanta.
Cool. Arielle, thank you so much for coming on to the show. You are the founder and the CEO of Zera House. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you are.
All right, so as we get into this, I first just want to hand it to you real quick. I want to allow you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then introduce Zera House to the audience and what Zera House is about, and we will just move along from there. So,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So my name is Arielle, and yes, I'm co-founder of Zera House. Kind of a little background of how it started was just walking through kind of my own, it's a story of rebellion. It's a story of a prodigal daughter. And in that, unfortunately, experiencing abuse, rape, all the things you can think of, drugs. And it was in my last relationship, a very abusive relationship, that I came out of, and I just was so hurt and lost and broken. And it was in my healing process that I was just like, God, like just crying out to God, God, I need you. And I wish I had a home, a safe refuge to go to in the mountains where I can just heal and where it's hidden away and I can, and just a place to just grow and heal and learn. And so it was during that time that I heard the Lord whisper beauty from ashes. And, that's his promise to us. And here we are 6 years later, and we have a house in the mountains for women who are broken and who have gone through some of the worst forms of abuse you can even imagine. And these are women who have escaped sex trafficking here in our country.
So how long has Zera House been an organization, and where did it originally start?
So we have been up and running, or I should say we have been in existence for 6 years. We originally started in Marietta, Georgia, and then the Lord brought us to West Virginia, to a tiny little county that's very hidden away. I would say it's in the middle of nowhere. In the middle of nowhere is the best way I could describe it. And come to find out, Zera House is actually the first program of its kind in the state of West Virginia. So the Lord definitely brought us there for a reason. Yes, there are resources for those who have escaped sex trafficking, but there are definitely not enough. And so we're happy to, establish the first program of its kind in the state of West Virginia, but our hope and goal is to plant homes all over the country. So started in Marietta, Georgia, went to West Virginia to plant our first home. The doors are so close to opening. We are getting so close. We've been under a lot of construction in the area, construction on our home. Resources in the area are limited, so it has been a very slow process. Of course, with COVID and the pandemic that hit, that has slowed us even more. But we are in the process of putting staff or hiring staff to be a part of the program, walk alongside of our survivors, so forth. So it is a process, and it is definitely taken some time. And anything that lasts does take time, right?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
And the idea is to get this we want this to last. So,
Right. So, speaking about being the first program of its kind in West Virginia, what is it exactly that separates Zera House from other programs that combat human trafficking?
Well, in the state of West Virginia itself, first of all, trafficking is just now coming really to the forefront. You're hearing about it in the news, right? So I'm just going to give you a little background. And you have some states that are way ahead of the game, for instance, Georgia, New York, New Jersey. You have all these trafficking task force, and people have been combating and on the front lines for years. Whereas West Virginia is just now coming to the forefront. So they're just a little behind on as far as resources for girls and women who have been trafficked. So if a girl calls and needs rescue and she is a trafficked victim, she will then be placed into like a women's battered shelter. Right. And so, the shelter is great. It's a safe place because, 87% of these women who are on the streets, who are in the game, have no safe place to go. And so that's why they're afraid to leave. Their food, roof, warmth, all those things are going to be taken away. Right.
Yeah.
So it's so great that they have a safe place to go to. The trauma they've endured, that's the need that needs to be met. Right. That's very specific. Sexual trauma is very specific. So our program is designed to meet that need. And that's what separates us and from the other programs that you would see in like West Virginia.
Cool. So I guess one of the things that I've wanted my audience to learn about as well when it comes to human trafficking, especially in the United States, can you give me any information about what would be a common misconception about human trafficking? So like, for instance, before I kind of really knew what was going on, if I were to think of human trafficking in the United States, I would think of domestic abuse. I would think of sexual violence. I would think of prostitution, things like that, like where there's, a pimp and then there's prostitutes, and that's pretty much the extent of it. Is there any other misconceptions that people kind of come across when they learn more about human trafficking in the United States?
Yes, there are plenty of misconceptions. I'll start with a very simple one, not just here in the United States, but globally. A lot of people, when I tell them like what I do, they're like, "Oh, like the movie Taken," and where a girl is like kidnapped, right, and then taken, and her dad is out looking for her. Like, yes, that does happen, but that's like far, far from what we see regularly. So you'll see like there's like the boyfriend tactic, which is like there's a whole grooming process, and so this is I'm going to quote, this is a quote, what I'm about to say, it's a quote from the movie Nefarious Merchant of Souls, and it's the best, like, quote out there when I think of trafficking, but human trafficking is the exploitation of vulnerability. So if
Wow.
you think about that, right?
Yeah.
So you're 14, 15 years old, you're at the mall, you're hanging out with your friends, you're vulnerable. Who's preying on you? And I mean, who wouldn't want a 14, 15-year-old girl wouldn't want to be told, "Oh, you're so beautiful." And then it's this whole grooming process. The guy comes in, he then starts buying her gifts. He tells her he, loves her. It's the boyfriend tactic. 2 weeks
Yeah.
later, he's saying, I did all this stuff for you. Now I'm going to have you do something for me. And then there's a whole, like, there's breaking the girl, which is the whole beating, rape, drugging, and getting them to perform and do things, against their will.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. And here's a misconception: it doesn't happen in my town. Yes, it does.
Right.
It happens in
Yeah.
every zip code.
And it
So
seems like a lot more of these human trafficking scenarios are more personal than they are like a stranger just coming into your life and forcing you to do something almost.
that's correct.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to give you the example of, like,
Yeah.
kids on their devices. That has become a huge, huge trap for victims.
Yeah.
Boys on video games. You don't know who they're talking to, right? I'm not a
Yeah.
big video game player, not really at all. But I do know, like, you can play against other people you don't know,
Yeah,
right?
you can chat in live internet rooms with strangers from across the world or in your own neighborhood. Yeah.
So that's a big stomping ground for pedophiles preying on young boys.
Yeah.
I've had a few good friends who have reached out to me because their 12-year-old daughters were on Snapchat sending nudes to a stranger who threatened to kill her and her whole family if she didn't send it. Okay.
Yikes.
So then, okay, now your 12-year-old daughter's naked body is out on the internet. We
Yeah.
have a major, like, child porn, exploitation of young children
It's it's
because
it's
of
an
the
epidemic basically.
internet and devices. Yeah, it is. It's an
Yeah.
epidemic, and it goes so deep, and it's so dark, and it's rampant. And a lot of people think, oh, it won't happen to me. It can't happen to me. Well, that's
Yeah.
you are now a vulnerable person. And
Right.
yes, it absolutely can happen to you or your child.
What are the typical demographics that you would come across in your situation? Is there a particular age range that you find it happening to the most, or a particular, like, maybe even someone in a particular status?
So socioeconomic background has really nothing to do with it. I would say, well, the average age a child is sold is between the ages of 12 and 14 years old. Okay. Now, that's the average age. So you have children much younger and you have children who are much older. Recently, I was just watching a short documentary, and really the ones who make the most money are teens, 15 years old, 14 years old. It's children who are making the most money for their pimps and their traffickers.
Yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes yeah, it's pretty sick.
What's the timeline for somebody that is thrown into that life, and then is there, like, what happens in the after? because you always hear about somebody that's in the middle of it or doing it, but then it's like what happens if they get too old or they're quote unquote like useless, like according to their pimps or their traffickers.
Right.
Does something happen?
Well, the average lifespan of a girl in the game or in the industry is 7 years. And
So from the moment they're brought into
from the moment they're
trafficking,
brought in, yeah. Now, of
their
course,
life expectancy is 7 years.
their life expectancy is 7 years because you can be killed by your pimp or trafficker. You can be killed by your John, your client, right? John is, I use the term loosely, but the John, just for listeners who don't know, is the client of
The customer, yeah.
the customer. So killed by a John, killed by drugs, overdose, suicide, STDs. You know, these are just a few of the ways that they'll pass.
So going into that, then, if the life expectancy is around 7 years, what is, I guess, would you have an idea of what the ratio of survival is for those who are thrown into that life and somehow manage to make it out?
I don't have a ratio, but I can tell you that once a girl is sold and is in the industry, it might take her up to 12 times in and out before she finally leaves and is finally able to get out and stay out.
So there are opportunities often for girls to be able to escape that life, but then it's almost a rehabilitation type scenario where they feel like they don't have a choice almost.
That's exactly right. It's all about the rehabilitation. When a girl is like trafficked or pimped out, like her brain it's programmed to basically think she's a piece of meat that can just be, and that's it. Like they've said that like ordering a girl is like ordering a piece of pizza. You can pick whatever toppings you want on your pizza. That's the same thing like ordering a girl online, right?
Yeah.
Or ordering whatever it is that you want to sleep with. So I talked about breaking the girl. I have this book here. I love reading it.
Reference
it's
whatever.
Very informative, but it's Fallen. It's by Annie
Lobert.
Yep.
Okay.
Fallen. She was in the game. She now has an organization out in Vegas. She's amazing, but she just wrote this book, and it really dives in deep to like what her experiences were. So I'm going to read this paragraph, and it's about the pimp and what the pimp does to the girl, right? Or their victim, to give you a better idea of like where their brains are at when they come out and why it's hard for them to really truly know what their worth is, right?
Yeah.
So a pimp basically breaks you first by brainwashing you. He makes you dependent on him, not only physically, but emotionally. He makes you feel that you cannot possibly live without him. And if you try to, your life will have no meaning. He is your universe. He is your meaning. As soon as you start believing this, he's got you. And then to solidify this control, he wraps up the deal by beating you into permanent submission. By then it's too late. You already love him. You won't leave him, and he knows it. So he uses that love as a weapon to make you his slave. You become frozen, afraid to rock the boat, afraid to stand up and leave. So obviously, they're scared also to leave.
Yeah. There's a genuine, complete retooling of the mindset of a girl who is trapped in that life. what is probably in your experience one of the most challenging things about the rehabilitation of these girls?
Oof. Reprogramming their brain, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Is it just like simply trying to convince them that of just like, hey, this is wrong?
here's the thing. Their pimps told them, we love you and we care about you.
Yeah.
So now advocates come along and we tell them the same thing.
Right. So
That is
their
hard.
whole definition of love and friendship and what's good is just skewed to begin with.
So distorted.
So basically, like when you say love, your definition is different than what they've grown up to understand. So now you have to say, listen, that person,
Yeah,
what they were telling you, that's not what that means.
sure. And it is great when you kind of see that like they get it.
Hmm.
You know, I've been researching this and doing this for over a decade, and the stories I hear of just like simple things like young girls, 13 years old, like, well, why does your pimp love you? How do you know he loves you? Well, because he bought me my favorite chips or, and got
Yeah.
me a soda. Like,
Yeah.
but he turns around, sells you up to 30 times a day and beats
Mm.
you. And, if you don't obey him or do what he asks you to do.
Yeah.
But he loves you because he brought you a bag of chips that you like.
Right. Right. So when it obviously the rehabilitation part is the,
That
second
is so
aspect.
crucial.
Right.
And we hear about rescues and like sting operations going down all over the country all the time, and it is fantastic. It is so phenomenal. But if we're going to get real here, it does their life doesn't start until after they really walk through the healing.
Yeah. Why isn't this more important? Like in your opinion, why is this not uh like the other day, this was sometime last year. I saw some sting operation that took place in Georgia where 39 like teenagers were found in these trailer homes and they were part
Yes.
of a human trafficking operation. But I
Yes.
mean, that was just not what was popular on television at the moment. Like I saw it on a like trending for an hour on Twitter. Why
Yeah.
is this stuff not more important?
That is a great question. And I
Mm.
wonder the same thing. Honestly, I think a lot of people, I think it's just a very hard thing to learn. A lot of people don't want their bubbles to be broken. They want to keep living in their little boxes because it's comfortable. This
Mm.
is and who wants to be uncomfortable, right? Like,
Right. Or who
so
wants to be told that their neighborhood or their zip code participates like in this, egregious activity, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody. So we have an ambassador program that we're in the process of launching, and it's basically setting up people all over the country with all the tools that they need to go out into their communities and share and spread awareness on what is happening, which is an awesome tool for those who are interested in learning more. But it's funny because our director of the ambassador program just did something recently, and she said there were 20 women in the room, and all of them their jaws hit the ground. They did not realize this even happens.
Mm.
They didn't know this happens, and of course they were all moved, and their hearts were broken for this, which is fantastic, and that's what we want. We want people's hearts to break with ours,
Yeah.
because the more people that are out there campaigning and sharing awareness, more eyes are being opened, and potentially you're saving lives. Because
Mm.
if you know what to look for. I mean, we get really into it, like what to look for. If you see anything going on out in the streets in your neighborhood, call 911, call the police,
Yeah.
call the trafficking hotline number.
Hey everyone, sorry for the minor inconvenience. What ended up happening just now was I lost contact with Arielle. My camera and my internet shut down, but I was able to reach back out to her and we were able to pick up right where we left off. Fixed everything. Sorry for that minor technical difficulty. And yeah, sorry about that. Let's get back to the show. All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that technical difficulty, but
That's totally okay.
picking up where we left off, what I was actually, the next question I was about to ask you
Perfect.
was, is there an education system or is there an educational platform that would allow people to learn more about what all goes on in their community or their country, or at least how to keep their eyes open for human trafficking?
Yes, and yes. We have we have partnerships with a lot of awesome organizations. One of them being Freedom 424 in Lynchburg, Virginia. They have an exceptional program, more directed for like young, from children, teens, middle school, high school, because we really need to be going in and educating our children of what to look for so that they're less vulnerable. But also parents, obviously teachers. We our own Zera House, we do awareness nights of awareness. Our ambassador program that we're working on right now is a great tool to go out into your community. And not only do we educate you and give you the tools you need to go out and educate, but we're actually in the process of right now planning a virtual training. I don't know what you want to call a virtual training night. It's going to be a couple hours where you can literally have people come to your home, to your church. And our board member, Bob Leslie, who's with the Attorney General's office in West Virginia, he's senior chief deputy with the Attorney General's office. He is on the front lines. He sees what's going on not only in West Virginia, but nationally. And he is going to be giving us a huge education session for anybody who wants to be in on it. I mean, this is something that you're going to, if this is something that like pulls on your heartstrings, you're going to want to be there for this.
Yeah.
And we're going to, through our website and our social media, be sharing more about that once we have that together and ready to go. Really,
well, fantastic.
a date is all we need to get on the calendar, but
I feel that. Well, so I feel like we've got a pretty good jump into just exactly like what human trafficking is and what it looks like in the United States, and then the way you guys are trying to combat it yourselves. Talking about fundraising for you guys, what's a way that people can get in touch with you guys or get involved or support you guys?
Always through our website, which is zerahouse.org. We have all different ways you can get involved. We do a few big fundraisers a year. This year, we've really been stretched because we couldn't do anything in person. So we've had to do things virtually, and it actually has really benefited us in all great ways. So always participate in our fundraisers, whether you're, helping to raise funds and go into your community to do that. Just simply reach out, info@zerahouse.org. Send us an email. We are happy to just simply know what your gifts and talents are. It's like some people see this and they just think this is just too big. This is something I can't do anything about this, when that is a lie. That's a lie. Not only do you have a voice, but you be using your voice and sharing about what you've learned today. But two, it's like, our homes need help with anything from feminine products to toiletries to, you know, paper goods. You can run a drive, you know. We have people placed all over the country. Our staff is all over the country. So you can easily get in touch with anybody that way as well. And since I'm in Atlanta, I'm in the process of, you know, looking for interns and volunteers who want to, you know, get together with me on a regular basis so that we can go out into this area and campaign and spread awareness.
Awesome. Well, Arielle, I think we pretty much captured the essence of who you are and the essence of Zera House. And I think anybody that listens to this is obviously going to be more educated and better off for it. And they'll also learn how to reach you. But before we kind of wrap this up and, you know, send you farewell with blessings and everything, what are some of the biggest prayer requests that you have right now?
Thank you for asking. Biggest prayer requests. We need staff for our homes. We don't want just warm bodies. As you heard, our girls are vulnerable and we don't want to do more harm than good.
Right.
Because it's a tough, as you heard, yeah, it's not an easy thing to manage, but so staff, we need committed staff. And so that's our, I would say, on the top of our prayer request right now, because our doors are getting so close to open. We've been in construction for almost 3 years now on the house, and we're gonna then need to fill it with staff that we do train. They go through intense training, so it's not like, you know, we're gonna just throw you in there and say good luck. You know, we're gonna equip you as best as we can. Of course, anything, you know, all circumstances are different, but we're going to equip the best way that we can. And, you know, God has provided every single step of the way. I know as the CEO of this organization, I'm supposed to say, yes, please give us your money. Of course, we welcome money, you know. And that is always on our prayer, is for the Lord to really bless us financially. But I can say that he has provided for the 6 years we've been doing this. And we're just, you know, grateful for him to keep sending people our way who want to give. There are so many different ways to give and things to give to within our program, whether it's you want to buy the curriculum, to we have a lady sponsorship packet. You know, we're happy to mail out anything to anybody who wants to know more. And then you have a folder filled with all of our everything, and you can just learn other ways to get involved.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Arielle, thank you so much for, you know, just educating us about Zera House and what you guys do. I hope everybody that has had the chance to listen is better off for it. I know that I am. If you guys want to help out Arielle at Zera House, you obviously know where to find her. Links to be able to connect with her will be put in the description of the show. But Arielle, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next time on the Triune Podcast.